right, and welcome into the Young Dad Podcast. I'm your host, Jay. Whether you're changing diapers, outside grilling, mowing the lawn, in the kitchen cooking, or maybe you're just laying on the couch letting the kids run wild, welcome to the Young Dad Podcast. Super excited for you to be here with us today. Super excited for your listening, and thank you so much for doing so. Today, I have such an incredible guest with me. Super excited for this conversation. I have John with us. John, you're a author of a cookbook, father, husband, among many other things. How are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you? Thanks for having me over.
Of course, man. I'm doing super well today. Super excited to have this conversation with you. It should be great. I'm really excited. But before we jump too far into it, I do want to just get right here at the top of the show, take care of some business, a little bit of housekeeping, as per usual, clean up the mess before we get started. So before we get into it, I want to shout out our opening sponsor of the podcast, Four Fathers Clothing, Four Fathers Apparel. If you listen to the podcast for any amount of time, you've heard me talk about Four Fathers Apparel. What they did is they set out to create dad clothing that is not just stylish, but also practical and comfortable. They understand that dads go above and beyond, because, we do. And the clothing is designed to keep up with that. The team of dad designers set out to build performance clothing because no other line existed before that represented dad, that also fit the dad lifestyle. So what they did is they took our favorite dadism, printed them on the best performing materials, and to fit the dad bod, because we all have a little bit of one, some more than others, but I'm not going to say who, with the code YOUNGDAD, you can save 20% on your entire purchase, and you help out the podcast tremendously, and you start looking fantastic. Easy conversation starters, and these polos, they're one of a kind, they're amazing, and there's new ones slated to come out very soon, so keep your eyes wide open. But enough of the business. John, tell us a little bit about you, about the cookbook. I understand that you're an author of a cookbook. You're very passionate about helping kids, getting kids involved in the kitchen early on, healthy diet, healthy lifestyle, healthy eating, and all those things all combined as well. So tell us a little bit about you, the cookbook, and kind of what you're all about.
So my new book, I have two books out. This one is Preppy Kitchen, super easy. And really, this is for the dads here because I have twin 7-year-old boys, which, as you can imagine, really keeps you very busy. And a lot of times parents have the best of intentions, but not so much time on their hands, right? We're stretched so thin. But you still want to put something delicious on the table. You want to have a variety of easy recipes that you can make without going to the grocery store and getting 1,000 ingredients.
Yeah.
And, as my life got busier, I felt this more and more. So this book is over 120 recipes of just super easy, quick, delicious things from breakfast through lunch, dinner, and dessert. And I really show you how to make everything you could want with as little time as possible, using streamlined recipes, including with all of your time-saving gadgets like your air fryers, your slow cookers, your Instant Pots, and tons of variations. So this is for all the busy people out there, including myself.
Right? So I have to ask, whose side does the twin gene run on?
It's both of us, actually.
No way. Are you guys both twins, or?
We both have twins in our family, yeah.
Oh, very cool. I thought you guys were both part of a set of twins. I'm like,
No, that'd
whoa,
be crazy.
That would be odd.
And
but that's super cool. Go ahead.
So just a little bit about myself. I was actually a middle school math and science teacher for over a decade. So I have a lot of experience kind of shaping those tweens. And it's a very vulnerable stage that those kids are in because they're not kids anymore. They don't have the confidence of the teenagers know who they are. And it's super formative. I love that age group because they were amazing sponges. They have the capability to do so much, but they're not jaded yet. They're still in that kind of young, amazing stage. One thing I did notice though, teaching math and science, a lot of kids had anxiety, that math anxiety. I'm like, you know what, Mr. Kanell, I can do this subject and this subject, but math is not for me. My brain doesn't work that way. I'm just not it's not gonna be something I'm good at. And that really kind of crushed me because these kids are at the very beginning of their life, but they've already decided hey, I can't do this. And, as an educator, you take complex things and you break them down into simple processes so the kids can experience success. And then you build on that until they become confident and have the skills they need. When I started teaching people how to bake and make food and cook, I had the same anxieties pop up. I'm sure you have friends who are like, I am a grill master, I cannot bake. Or, I love, my project bakes, but I can't do anything with meat. Or the list goes on. People have these ideas of what they can and can't do in the kitchen. A lot of people just use their credit cards, and that's the end of the day.
Yeah.
But I saw it as the same kind of anxiety where all you had to do was break complex things down into simple pieces, have clear instructions, and most of all, make sure people are prepared. If you go into the kitchen and you don't have the right ingredients and the right tools, if you didn't read the recipe through, it's going to be really nerve-wracking and not pleasurable. Making food should be fun. So that's kind of how Preppy Kitchen started. That's where the name is. It's a play on words of being prepared. And
Love it.
I think it's been successful. I have a lot of people who have experienced success because they just hadn't laid things out the right way. It wasn't started correctly. So you're halfway through a recipe and you're doing a mad dash looking for an ingredient or for a tool and something's burning on the stove.
Oh my gosh.
It's not a recipe for success. It's happened to all of us, including me. I make tons of mistakes in the kitchen. I am not perfect at all. I always make sure to show that on my YouTube channel. I made eclairs recently, and for the first time in my life, it's one of my favorite things to bake. They fell flat. I was like,
oh no.
But it's a great teaching moment. Hey, could you still fill these up and they're going to be delicious? Yes. But I'm going to show you how to do this right way. So let's rewind this and take it back and do it correctly. But, we all make mistakes in the kitchen. A lot of times you can just power through and it's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be delicious or something that you'll enjoy. And I'm just really here to help people along the way. The book is an extension of that.
I love that. You hit on so many great points there. First off, middle school math teacher, that middle school age. I work in mental health, so I'm kind of on the other side of working with those same children in that same age range of middle school, that tween, early preteen, teenage age. And there's a super interesting group. We always joke at work, and we promise we love the kids we work with. We love the youth and families we serve. But the middle school ones, when we get a middle school on board, a middle schooler on board, it's can we just fast forward until they're 15? Maybe can we just skip 12 to 14 and just get them to 15? Because this age, that's such a rough age for these kids. And they already are coming from elementary school with some sort of limiting belief on who they are. And it happens really early on, those limiting beliefs, and they carry very well, and they carry into adulthood. Some way, shape, or form. And you kind of laid it out perfectly, where their limiting beliefs started in elementary school to where they get to middle school, they don't have the confidence, and they already have the belief that math isn't for them because they were always told, well, reading's your strong suit, writing's your strong suit, PE and physical activities are your strong suit. You're not really cut out for this. So then their beliefs are limited, and then that carries out into adulthood. Well, I'm good at this, but I'm not good at this. Have I ever tried it? One time I was told I wasn't good at it, so I'm not good at it. So then that carries on into adulthood. And then it's very easy. I remember back in middle school, we still had home ec. And at my middle school, which home ec was
great,
cooking.
By the way.
Oh, it's amazing. It was cooking, sewing, we had to sew shirts and bags and all this random stuff. It was
a real life application for everything you'd actually want to do.
Yeah, and I was also an Eagle Scout, so between Boy Scouts and home ec and life, I learned a lot of great skills to where, again, I had that confidence because each merit badge, you have to get certain merit badges to get a rank advancement. You have to check cooking, sewing, fishing. Those are essential for this next rank. And it makes sense because it's a concept upon concept, precept upon precept. Granted, that's a biblical teaching, but it's a real world teaching as well. You have to start small and break it off into small little chunks for it to be attainable. It's one thing I talk about all the time on the podcast. Break it off into small steps, step by step, and keep it simple. Build your confidence, whether that looks like you cooking in the kitchen or you exercising. Maybe you're not exercising right now. Okay, well, don't try to go to the gym for 2 hours a day. That's going to be unsustainable. Start by taking a 5-minute walk around the neighborhood. There you go. You're starting. And then make it 10, then make it 15. Once you get to 30, okay, maybe now you're ready to go to the gym and start incorporating something else. But build that confidence. And it's so important.
And also have the capability to give yourself grace and forgiveness. Because a lot of us hold ourselves to a really high standard and we have the best of expectations. But in practice, it's difficult to make that sustainable. And to, being perfect in real life just doesn't exist. So it's just important to do the best that you can. Like, I love having my kids in the kitchen and helping out. And they really, at this point, they crave it and they love helping. They ask if they can help all the time, which is great. Have someone to help, shuck peas and do all that stuff that I find tedious or don't have time to, but they love.
Yes.
But when you have kids in the kitchen, just temper your expectations. It's a learning process. The kitchen is a classroom in so many ways. So just understand, this is an opportunity to learn, and we learn through failure. It doesn't have to be perfect. And also let your kids know that. A lot of times kids are so disappointed because they see what should be done and they don't understand all the processes to get there. So, it's not the best experience for them when that doesn't look like they expect. That's your job as a parent to come in and say, this was amazing. You learned how to do this and this, and next time we know X, Y, and Z. So, there's so many great opportunities, but you don't want to ruin the experience for your kids. A lot of kids had really bad experiences with math or with English or whatever else, and that colors the rest of their academic education. Same thing for really anything you do in life, including being in the kitchen.
No, 100%. And the kitchen's such an interesting place too, because I watched this TED Talk once, and majority of a child's language when they're learning early language skills, that's a mouthful. While they're learning these early language skills when they're toddlers or pre-toddlers, whatever that age is, 1 to 5, right? Their very first words that they pick up are in the kitchen. They're in the dining room. They're around food. They're around the kitchen setting, asking for food, asking for a drink, asking for something specific. Most of the language is learned right there in the kitchen. It's a really interesting TED Talk. I'll have to find it and watch it again, send it to you. But it just plots this guy put cameras and everything around his home, sensors, ears basically around his home, and it plotted data points every time his child said a certain word, and what that word was referring to. And I want to say it was 65% was within the kitchen and dining room area, which I'm that's powerful. It just shows how important, because food's important to your well-being. Even a little baby knows that.
It's such a tangible moment. One of the reasons I love having my kids in the kitchen and I love being there is, we all have our phones, fine, but it's kind of a moment to set that aside. And instead of dealing with something through a screen, it's one of those few hands-on moments you have left where it's tactile and you're in the moment, and it's almost meditative. You're really just thinking about what you're doing. A lot of things fall away to the side. And that's wonderful for kids. And it's also such a great opportunity to learn. As a former math teacher, I so often wish I could go back in time and say, take these lessons from the kitchen about part-whole relationships or accuracy or, measurement, and wrap them into a math lesson, because they'd be so much more valuable. When I'm with my kids and we're doing either making pizza and, you can talk about half of the whole, a quarter of the whole, or the two pieces are different sizes. Do you want half of this or a third of this? And it gives you that hands-on real life moment where they're oh, I get it. This isn't totally abstract to me.
Yeah.
So
no, they can learn so much from the kitchen in that moment, because you have to deal with quarters, thirds, halves, 2/3, 3/4. You have to deal with all these extra numbers and stuff. And I'm sure that speaks to your math teacher heart at the same time. But it's interesting, because if they grab the wrong one, if they grab a teaspoon versus a tablespoon, well, that's way too much baking soda for cinnamon rolls.
Right.
But fun fact, when you were talking earlier about different things that people do in the kitchen versus grill and stuff, my favorite thing to bake is cinnamon rolls. But I remember probably 2 or 3 times ago when I made cinnamon rolls, I straight up forgot baking soda and baking powder. So when they came out, or they weren't rising like in the bowl,
Yeah.
like there was like, I'm like, why isn't this rising? Like I've let it sit out here, it's warm, like it's on top of the oven, the oven's warming up, but it's not rising. And I go back and I check my recipe, and I'm like, no, I put everything in there, and I forget something. So then I called my mom, my stepmom, and I'm like, hey, what am I forgetting? Because this is her recipe. I'm like, what am
Mm.
I forgetting? She's like, oh, did you add? If they're not rising, did you add baking soda or baking powder? I'm like, no, because it's not written down. She's like, oh, well, you need to add it. So somehow I had to get baking powder into these cinnamon rolls. So I had to take it out of the bowl. I took it apart and I put it in there. I re-kneaded it and redid it, and they didn't turn out great, but they were delicious regardless.
And
And
it was a
so it
really important lesson that you will never forget.
no, now it's in my recipe book.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
no, getting kids involved in the kitchen, it's a life skill. It's important for them to know like how to crack an egg, how
Mhm.
to cook, and not be afraid of the heat. Granted, as they get older, they're able to do more things, and they're able to help more, and they're able to try more,
Yeah.
and they're gonna make mistakes. Like, how many mistakes do you make in the kitchen? Like, not you, John, but like
No, I
the
make a ton.
average person, the average person, like out there. Like every time I cook, like I make these things called crack burgers, and they're probably one of our favorite things. We have them almost every week. And basically, what they are is just hamburger, a ranch packet, uh, bacon, cooked bacon, shredded cheese, a couple dollops of mayo, and a dollop of sour cream. Mix it all together. They're so good. They're
Hmm.
so tasty. But how did I make them? Oh, I made them too small. I made them too skinny. So then when I'm cooking them on the grill, they're burning. They're getting a little bit too crispy, and so they weren't as good. So again, a lesson I learned because I messed up. I
Yeah.
didn't know what I was. I was trying to do too many other things at the same time. Like I was trying to make sides inside while cooking outside on a grill. So I was all over the place trying to make these burgers, and it just
Yeah.
didn't work out. But
One of the things from the book, by the way, because that's something that all of us do. We try to do it all. Just like the kids, we have the best of intentions, but we're human and we are super busy. Like I don't think people have ever been as busy as they are now. So like the very first chapter of the book is called The Pantry of Convenience, and it teaches you how to like set up your pantry so you have everything at hand, you have the right ingredients. I talk about like different ways to treat butter. We talk about different kinds of butter, and also how to have like sauces at hand, how to have salad dressings that are at the ready to use. Because salad dressings are something that are so easy to make that you can really kind of tailor to your exact taste. And just having the dressing on hand makes it so much more likely that you'll actually make that salad to serve with dinner. And it's a win-win. I also
oh
have like
yeah,
different dry mixes. So if you wanted to make chocolate chip cookies at the drop of a hat, you could have the dry mix already and the recipe is halfway done. And the same thing for pancakes and waffles and different kinds of cakes. So a lot of us have like little bits of time here and there, but it's not enough to like make the full recipe. So if you can use that, like make a mix or step things out, then you could be so much more successful. Something that's especially true for like having people over. I don't know, like you feel stressed out when you're having a party and like
yeah,
you have to make those sides for the burgers and you have to like do this and this and that. Like the list just goes on. It seems
yeah.
so simple when you're planning it, but then when you're actually executing it, you're like, oh my gosh, I also have to clean the house. Like, it just
Yeah,
kind of
you're trying to do all the 100 things. Like you're trying to make sure things are clean. You're trying to make sure the kids' room's tidy because everyone's gonna go into the kids' room and see how dirty their room is. You're
yeah,
gonna vacuum that same floor of that one room that maybe one person might see, kind of thing. And so you're worried about all these extra things, and you don't have time to really focus and put time into the one thing that people are maybe coming over for, and
it's a
that's
never ending
yourself.
list.
Yeah, like they're coming over to spend time with you. Like, yes, the food's a bonus, but honestly, they're coming over to spend time with you.
Yeah. And how do you make that time worthwhile so that you're not a stressed out wreck when these people
Yes.
are coming over to spend time with you?
Yeah.
So many things you can do, like make a dessert in advance and just have it in the freezer for whenever you need it. My mom is the master of the last minute party because if she's ever making something like a casserole or like a spanakopita, which is a Greek spinach pie or a cheesecake. She's like, I'm already going to all this trouble. I'm just going to make two. So she'll make two of them, and then one is for now, and she'll pop one into the freezer. So her freezer is like a fully stocked
genius. That's
store.
genius.
And then like when she's having people over, she takes it out of the freezer to defrost or whatever, pops it into the oven, and maybe does one or two, like makes a salad, makes some kind of veggie dish, and it's all ready to go. And she is not stressed out. She has time to clean the house, and
That's a life hack. That is so genius.
Yeah, so if you're having people over, what can you do? It's the same thing for Thanksgiving. Like Thanksgiving is that ultimate moment where we're just like, I have to do all this stuff.
I always feel like Bob's from Bob's Burgers, because the Thanksgiving episodes of Bob's Burgers are so fantastic. But every year it just shows how much, because he loves Thanksgiving. Like Thanksgiving is like Bob's day. Like that's his marathon. And he literally schedules his whole day. Wake up to dinner time. Like he has a schedule, he's strict, he's rigid. If anything gets messed up, and of course he has 3 kids and a wife, and Bob's Burgers is a chaotic world, which just shows like how crazy it is. Like he gets so caught up in the little details that he goes above and beyond, because it's like that's his like day where he's gonna go above and beyond. And Thanksgiving is, I feel like that every Thanksgiving when I'm cooking. Like, oh man, I got to do the turkey. I got to make sure I defrost the turkey. If it's wrong, it's wrong. Like somehow the turkey ended up in the toilet again. And it's a crazy time. But go ahead. Sorry, Thanksgiving.
No, it's the exact same thing. So when I do Thanksgiving, and unsurprisingly, I'm the one who cooks.
What? No way!
Shocking.
Whoa!
So like days in advance, like Thanksgiving for me starts like that week, and I'm just like starting the prep, and I like go slow. So by the time Thanksgiving rolls around, like the mac and cheese is like ready for that second bake with the breadcrumbs on top. The sweet potato casserole is in there ready to go into the oven. Like everything is ready to go into the oven, and the turkey is prepped. So that day I'm really just like making the turkey. I make a salad and the veggies, and the rest of it just kind of like has its time slot in the oven. And it's so much more easy and manageable. I've done it the other way around, where I'm trying to like get everything at the last moment, and it is not fun. So I learned the hard way. Just step it out. And if you can, like toast some nuts, do some chopping, do some like, chop some veggies up, like just get it done as far in advance, pop it into the fridge, and then come back to it as you have time as the week progresses. And like any kind of dessert, make that ahead of time, pop that into the fridge or freezer, and then you can just like thaw it or whatever the day of. You do not want to be doing a lot of work, because just setting the table is a whole thing,
Yeah. Getting the forks on the right sides and everything. Like that's it's a chaotic mess. But no, I love that part of the book here, of the cookbook here. Just all the chapter 1, all the ingredient guide. The ingredient guide makes it so easy, so simple to understand, because the average man may not know 90% of this. Well, let's go with the 80-20 rule. Let's go 80% of this. They may not know how to store these things, how to make these things, why these things are important, or they may not even have them in the kitchen if they're a single dad. Like they may not just have these things, period, on hand, ready. And then it goes into chapter 2, the equipment guide. Like the equipment guide makes it so easy because it's not a lot. And one thing I recommend, especially for single parents, for single dads out there, like if you can look at this equipment guide and you can get like the accessories and the measuring tools and sheets and pans, like if you can get them off like Marketplace or maybe Goodwill for some things, or maybe even Dollar Store, because Dollar Store, surprisingly enough, has every single kitchen gadget you can need and then some. Like I don't know how many times I found a burger press like at home, like a plastic one, to just pre-press my burgers. I'm like, this thing is absolutely incredible. I just spray it with some spray, and bada bing, bada boom, Bob's your uncle. It's fantastic. It's so cool. So
I always love doing things secondhand. Like I love these. Like I love copper pots and pans. It's like one of the things that sparks joy for me. But I will definitely buy them used, because you can find them so cheap at like yard sales and that sort of thing.
Mhm.
And then you just put a little bit of elbow grease into cleaning them up. And, a lot of times they're better than the new ones.
100%. Same for a cast iron too. Like if you can
Oh
find
my
a
God,
good
yes.
cast iron, like at a garage sale or something, it's rusted out. One trick you could use is you can go down to like Lowe's or Home Depot, and you can buy the Blackstone like restoration kit for like the Blackstone to use on your cast iron at home.
That's a great
And
hack.
it'll make it that thing looking brand new, and you can get the seasoning for the Blackstone to use on your cast iron, because
Yeah.
essentially Blackstone is a big cast iron, and your little cast iron you can use all the same stuff. My favorite thing to use on my cast iron, I just use salt, hot water, and a lot of elbow grease. A lot of elbow grease to scrub it. But hey, it works, restores it. And you want to get a good oil. I don't know if that's mentioned in here at all, but bringing back your cast iron, that's a labor of love.
I'm someone who will leave things in the sink except the cast iron.
Yes, never. I will leave it on the stove dirty for days, or I'll leave it in the oven. And then I'll turn the oven on and I'll forget. Holy crap. I'm like, what is that? What is going on? Like I'm smelling something, and I'm like, oh, the cast iron. So I'll reach my hand and I'm like, that's already hot. So I have to grab an oven mitt, pull it out, and I just leave it there. I'm like, well, it's better than just sitting in water. So
anything is better than sitting in water. As long as it's not acid.
Yeah, no, it just has some grease in it. It's fine. Whatever. Your grease will reharden. It'll give it some more flavor. There's worse things that could happen.
That's
clean it later. But no, it's great. And then we go into chapter 3 here. I'm just kind of going through general tips and tricks, substitutions. This is really cool. How to measure flour. I didn't know there was a certain way to measure flour. Go ahead.
That is the main problem that people have in the kitchen whenever they're using flour. Because you think of like sugar. You'll take a cup of sugar, and that's a cup of sugar. I mean, you level it off, and it is what it is, right? It's if this granulated sugar is 200 grams or a cup. But flour is totally different because you can pack it down. So if you have a bag or a container of flour and you scoop it up and level it off, you can get 80% more flour than you need. Because the actual way to measure flour is, one, just buy a scale, like get a cheap scale, and you're going to be so happy because you're saving time doing dishes. There's less of these little measuring cups to wash. And it'll be completely accurate. And if you have kids in the kitchen, it's the best part of like teaching them. Like, what is the exact number? How close can you get to 180? Like you can talk about like, rounding, accuracy, measurement, all that stuff comes together, and everything comes out perfectly. If you don't have a scale and you want to like make something with measuring cups, that's fine. But here's what you actually do. You grab a spoon and you fluff the flour up in the bag or container. And then you gently sprinkle the flour in like a summer rain until the measuring cup is full, and level it off with a knife. And you'll notice that it is like so fluffy inside. It's not at all compacted. Like 1 cup of flour should be 120 grams. If you just scooped it up, you can get like 200 grams of flour in there. And when you make your thing, even though you think you followed the recipe perfectly, your baked good is going to be drier and breadier. It's like if you were making cinnamon rolls, those cinnamon rolls aren't going to be like melt in your mouth, soft, fluffy, buttery.
Because that happens sometimes. That happens sometimes when they're just a little bit breadier, a little bit thicker, and I'm like, oh.
So like that's one of the things that I made sure to talk about in the book, because so many people get that wrong, and it's insidious because they had no idea, like, oh, I'm doing something wrong. I thought I followed the recipe perfectly. This is not a really good recipe. It's just that you added way too much flour.
Yeah, what? That's crazy. I did not. I learned something too. And then, just kind of going through here, we get to chapter 4, sauces, dressings, and meal makers. This is super cool because it's so simple. It's just simple recipes, simple dressings.
You can use like those sauces on any kind of protein you want. Like if you love salmon, pour it on. Or if you want to like get those veggies to be a little bit more interesting for the kids, like let's have a dressing or a sauce you could pour on that just happens to be in the fridge because you made it when you had a couple minutes.
This pesto by the batch, you said salmon, this pesto by the batch would go so well. Costco does that. They put pesto on their salmon when you can get it pre-packed and pre-made at Costco. And it's like, Who would have thought? I never would have thought about it previous to that because I grew up in the Pacific Northwest. So
Yeah.
salmon of any kind is delicious, but I never had salmon with pesto because we don't do it on the west side of the state, but it's something here on the eastern side of the state where it's pre-packed with pesto. And I'm like, what
Yeah.
the heck? Like, that's delicious.
And like, if you want to talk about having a last minute party, I was at a friend's house and all these people randomly came over because we all have kids and just kind of congregated.
Yeah.
Nothing was planned, but she had a big batch of pesto she had made because it was the summertime. And she made a giant bowl of pasta, tossed it with the pesto, and made a simple salad with the dressing she had on hand. And it was a delicious, super easy dinner. Everyone liked it, low lift. And, at the end of the day, you were coming to hang out with your friends. Maybe you have a glass of wine too. It's not about having the most elaborate, complex meal. So simplicity can be good.
Simplicity is perfect, especially when it comes to being a parent, trying to cook meals for little humans. Like I have to, like at least in our home, so I have my kids every other week because I co-parent.
Mhm.
But the weeks I have them, we go through and we make a menu on a whiteboard. Like we make a menu for Friday to Friday because like we get them Friday morning and then we drop them off the following Friday. And so every day it says what we're gonna have for dinner, just to take the guesswork out of it. And then we involve them to let them know, like, hey, what's a day you want to pick a dinner for? What's a day you want to pick a dinner for? So then they're excited about what they're going to eat. They look forward to a meal. They feel involved. And when kids are involved in at least the meal choices, let alone the cooking, like they're exponentially more likely to actually eat that meal.
Totally true.
And so
that's how I got my kids to like try spices out. I would always have them add the spices into whatever we were making. Because it's like something a 3-year-old can do. That's like, oh, pour in that teaspoon or whatever. And if there was any resistance, I was like, no, remember you did this. Like, don't you want to try it and see how it tastes? And like, it's fine if a kid doesn't have to like something, but I think they do have to try it. I'm not going to force feed something that they don't want to eat, but I do want them to try new flavors so they're not locked into like the narrowest thing of what they want to eat. There's always a surprise, like maybe they will like a tomato, or maybe they will like to have this vegetable that you wouldn't think they would like. Yeah.
No, it's important for them to try all those things, right? Like my daughters, they don't like spice. I love spice.
Yeah.
Like spice it up. The spicier, the better. Me and my wife, we love spice. Chili oil, like that's all the good stuff. We'll load it on, hook it up, no problem. My daughters, on the other hand, if that's even a hint of that on their plate, on their food, it's trying to cool off their tongues and everything, and it's like they don't like it.
That was our dinner last night. I made butter chicken, and it was not spicy. It's like it's literally just like it's butter chicken, but I had like this is so spicy.
It's the pepper. Even pepper does it to them.
Yeah, a little life hack is you could add like a dollop of plain yogurt or sour cream, and it really like kind of cools the balance, gives you some balance.
Yeah, whenever we have tacos, my oldest daughter will make sure that she has the sour cream next to her.
Yeah.
And she'll load up every one of her tacos with some sour cream, and she enjoys it so much, and I don't hear a single complaint about it being too spicy or anything.
That's nice. It's a win-win.
And sometimes it's just, she just somehow finds something spicy, or maybe it's spicy to her. And I think that's important to note too. Like everyone's taste buds are a little bit different.
Totally.
Kind of thing. Your kids aren't going to like the same things as you, and you're not going to like the same things as them. You're going to think they're a psychopath because they like tomatoes and you hate tomatoes, and they're so weird for liking tomatoes. I promise I am speaking from experience here, because somehow my 3-year-old likes tomatoes. I couldn't look at a tomato, let alone try to eat one. She likes them.
I didn't think I liked tomatoes, by the way, until I started growing them. Because like grocery store tomatoes are just, they can be so bad.
They're so like waxy. They're so weird looking.
Yeah, but we have a vegetable garden here, and
that's on brand.
But the tomatoes that you grow are just like, they're not waxy. They're super soft when they're ripe, and they're so packed with flavor. Like if you smell a fresh tomato, you're like, oh my gosh, that smells intoxicating. But like a lot of times the grocery store tomatoes are just reddish orbs, and they taste like watery nonsense. I don't know.
Yeah. I feel like that's how most store-bought vegetables taste, is just watery. Like weirdness. Like that's I
It's
think that's probably why I've never liked them, is because they just taste like weird water.
it depends on the season. Also, sometimes if it like yeah, like we have a bunch of different types of peppers we grow in the summer. If we get a lot of rain, some of them will just like taste. They have like almost no flavor sometimes because like
Oh,
they
because they're
just
like watered
absorbed
down.
way too much water, grew too fast, and
Oh,
it's missing. So it's sometimes it's just the weather that can do you in too.
that makes sense. Because heat and peppers, they kind of go together.
Yeah.
So you essentially, this is probably science stuff that you know better than I do, but I would assume the heat helps the pepper get hotter in taste, whether if it's watered down, it's watered down kind of thing. So
Yeah, some things like need a ton of water and some things don't. Like celery, we grow celery, and
okay,
our celery is much like narrower and a bit more fibrous, but super flavorful. So great for soups and things. And it's the opposite of those peppers. Those peppers do not want as much water as the celery, and they need different kinds of soil and all that stuff. The list goes on. One of the
makes
recipes in the
sense.
book that I was super happy about, by the way, is it's called Nana's vegetable soup. Because whenever my mom comes to visit us, the first thing she does is go to the garden with the kids and like harvest all the vegetables, and then they all get to work chopping, and they make a really simple but delicious vegetable soup, and the kids love it, in part because they do all you can chop like big pieces of vegetables with like blunt knives that
Yeah,
are kid safe, and they get to help. They really feel like they're making the soup too, but it's just like a delicious, super easy soup. So I made sure to include that, and the kids were so excited to see the recipe in the book. It's like, oh my god, that's our recipe.
that's awesome. No, and that's another thing. If you're trying to think, well, how do I get my kids involved in the kitchen when it comes to cutting things? You can go on Amazon for, I want to say, maybe 10, $12. You can get a 3-pack of like Century knives. They're
Mhm.
plastic knives, essentially. They're either Century or they're Montessori knives, but you can get the knives for like $12. It's a pack of 3 and they're plastic, but they actually chop. They have a bigger handle, like a little bit wider of a blade, but they're plastic. Like you can run it along your hand. It's not going
Yeah,
to cut you, it's not going to cut them, but it will cut the vegetable. They can use it for cucumbers, celery, carrots, anything really. And you can get them chopping. It gets them learning that motion because it really is. I remember I didn't start cutting stuff until I was like 17, and I was a prep cook in a kitchen over once like my junior year summer. I was working 2 jobs, and this was my other job, and like I was the slowest cutter there because I had just no experience cutting, and so these older dudes would come over and they would show me like how to cut. They're like, "You gotta put your fingers like this, and then you gotta move the
yeah.
blade like this," and I'm like, "I'm gonna cut my finger off." They're like, "You're not gonna cut your finger off." I'm like, "Well, you might not, but I will." Um, and so then they would just laugh. But I got faster at it eventually. But yeah, cutting's a skill to be learned. It's
It's
a
one of those fine motor skills that kids
yes,
don't learn a lot of because so much of the work is like on computers now, you know?
yeah. And this is and it's gonna be harder for boys to learn those fine motor skills because it's just not in like the boy repertoire, like
Right.
by nature, right? Girls, fine motor skills, coloring in the lines, neater handwriting, those kind of fine motor skills, those are all more common for females to have earlier on and to develop at a higher rate versus boys. Like we like large motor skills, large motor movements, things like that. It makes more sense to our brains because
Right.
that's just how we're made up. So those fine motor skills, especially for men, are going to be way harder to learn if they're not introduced earlier, or if they're not practiced when you're older and when you have the ability to actually do fine motor skills at a slightly higher level. Even though they're difficult, you can still do it.
It's also
So
just a great life skill to have, being able to cut things up when you need to is very
yeah,
important.
and knowing how to cut different things and how you're supposed to cut different things to different sizes, and understand like if I cut this too big, it's gonna really stand out. But if I cut this too small, then it's gonna make a weird crunch or a bite or something. So understanding your different ingredients is super important.
Hmm.
Or if I cut a bay leaf up, well, that's probably not the best idea because I don't want to be eating bay leaf.
You pick
Um,
those out afterwards.
yeah, you take them out. Don't leave them in. I think I can at least say that's happened to me before, where I left them in and then I took a bite of a bay leaf and I'm like, that's not supposed to be there.
It's true.
But kind of looking through this, so I'm into chapter 5, which is breakfast. If you had to pick out a breakfast or two from the breakfast section, what would be like the breakfast to highlight here?
I'm going to go for the kids' favorite. So, there's a split in our household between waffles and pancakes. And
Okay.
that's like a good weekend thing for us. Like, I don't usually do it on the weekdays, but like I love having that for a weekend breakfast.
Oh, yes.
And
Hmm.
you're busy, but all parents become short order cooks, right? So it's just everyone at the beginning says, I'm not going to do this. You're going to eat what I make. But then you start modifying things, and eventually everyone's getting a separate breakfast. So
Yeah.
I was excited about this recipe because I made one that works for both. You get a really fluffy, beautiful, tender pancake, and you can use the exact same batter to make a fluffy, super crispy golden waffle. And it's very
Okay.
easy,
This is
totally delicious.
George's Pancakes and Waffles, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And they work out well. So like the waffle maker's going, and I'm also making a couple pancakes, and they're great. And the nicest thing is you can make a big batch. And I usually I do this with waffles, but it works for pancakes too. You just freeze them, and you can put a piece of wax paper between so they don't stick. And you have a giant
Yes.
batch of waffles that you can use throughout the week. I just pop them into the
Yes.
toaster, and they are like the best, most delicious, crisp waffles. And they taste fresh, but you made them, days ago. They've been hanging out in the freezer.
Yes. No, I've done that so many, especially during the school year.
Mm-hmm.
I would do that. My kids love mini pancakes. So I would just take a batch of pancakes and I would make just a ton of different mini pancakes. Some with chocolate chips, some with blueberries, some with sprinkles, some plain, some with cinnamon, some with just whatever else. So I would make like 4 or 5 different kinds
Mm-hmm.
and then just bag them up and throw them in the freezer, separate them into little like sandwich baggies or snack bags, and then just get them going. After that, then it's just, take them out, pop them on a plate, pop them in the microwave, a 1 minute breakfast. And it's literally 50 cents a breakfast. And compared to the grocery store, if I bought those same mini pancakes from the store, that's like $6. But I can do this for a week and spend $3 versus,
However much, but also with like ingredients that that the quality of and what they are, and there's nothing extra to stabilize or preserve it.
yeah,
So you know what you're putting in your kids' bodies, which is something I'm very passionate about. Like I love having control over what they eat because I want the best for them, and I just use a little bit of butter or olive oil as opposed to all these like stabilized fats and things.
yes. So I guess that's a great place to kind of lead into the end here. What are some of those things that you 100% avoid in the kitchen that are not in your kitchen or not in your home ingredient wise that you will avoid like the plague?
I just don't use shortening. That's
Okay.
something that's not for me because I would rather use like just butter. Butter's amazing. Or I'll use, or some like clarified like bacon grease or something if I need it to have that quality.
Right.
And then other than that, I try and steer clear of like super processed foods. That's why one of the reasons I like making things. And anything with crazy dyes in them. That's about it.
Hmm, interesting. So pretty simple.
Yeah.
Nothing crazy. Okay. And
And
then,
luckily none of us have any allergies in the house. I know that like that can make things a lot more complicated.
yeah, yeah. I guess just overall between breakfast and then the next chapter is dinner or lunches. I lost my spot here.
It's okay. So it's separated into, it goes on from breakfast, and you have like easy one pot meals. You have like main courses. There are a bunch of different sides, and then we go to the dessert section, which gets really fun. And I love having some of like the fan favorite recipes, like a perfect chocolate chip cookie. But let's talk about like making the right chocolate chip cookie for you, because some people love a crisp one. Some people like them soft and cakey. Some people like them chewy. there's a combination, and you can get that by using like different flours, different chill times, and even by portioning them out to different sizes. And you can also use a dry mix so you can make it really easy, like I said before. In the book, I
You're
wanted to
supposed
give
to
people.
you're
Was it?
supposed to chill your cookie dough batter?
You can. So if you chill the cookie dough batter, what can happen? It kind of gives the flavors a bit longer to marinate together. The flour gets hydrated, and you end up with usually a puffier cookie that spreads less. So, a good hack to do if your kids like the occasional cookie, but you don't have time to make them like every single time, is you make a big batch of chocolate chip cookies, and then you scoop them out, put them on a baking sheet, and you freeze them. And then you take those frozen cookie balls and you pop them into like a freezer bag, basically. And then you can just like bake off a couple whenever you want them, and they can bake from frozen. And you're going to have like a really nice, thick, chewy chocolate chip cookie. And also, it's like way less cleanup. You have like you don't have like a ton of cookies that the kids feel like they have to eat. So it's like it's a good win-win situation.
No, that's perfect. 'Cause I don't know how many times like I have made cookies and was like, oh man, now I'm stuck with 30 cookies. I guess I have to eat them, kind of thing. But then they get hard, and then they get like just annoying, and
They're not
then
as
you're
fresh
like,
and
man,
delicious anymore.
no, they're not as good. So that's fantastic. And just looking through all these like recipes here, like there's such a variety. Like there's literally a little something for every taste almost. There's there's cakes and desserts, and like this perfect birthday cake looks like the perfect birthday cake.
That was on that recipe, I actually the sprinkles I made with the kids. That's a really fun project.
Wait, is there a recipe to make sprinkles?
I had the recipe to make sprinkles on the blog and on my
Okay.
YouTube channel, but you're basically just making kind of like an icing sugar,
Okay.
and you pipe little lines, and then the kids get to break the lines up, and that becomes sprinkles. It's super easy,
Oh
and
wow.
it's like a fun weekend project. You can like have them, you keep them in a jar for a few months, and they'll be great. But in
Huh.
this book, I really wanted to give people the opportunity to like try recipes multiple times. So I made sure
Mhm.
to do different variations and like different ways to swap proteins out, to try different spices, to try like ways to change the flavor profile, to make things differently as far as the shape goes as well. So like a lot of the cakes can be made as layer cakes or as a sheet cake or as cupcakes. And I'll give you like just the different baking instructions for that, because sometimes your kids are like, oh, I really love that cake, but I want cupcakes. So like that's fine. The recipe shows you how to do that, and you can revisit the book again and again and really make the recipes your own. I hope that everyone who gets a book feels free to like just mark up the margins, to write all in it. And I want to see these books like splattered and well used. They shouldn't be pristine.
No, and I don't think any cookbook should be like pristine. Like my like own little recipe book, like you can tell liquid's been spilled on it. Some of the
Totally.
ink's kind of everywhere, but that's like my like go-to like recipe. Those are like my top tier recipes. Like I keep my quesadilla recipe in there. I keep my porcupine ball recipes. Like I keep my like family recipes in there, like my cinnamon rolls, like the very important things in there.
Yeah.
But it should be every book, if it's your book that you owned, whether it's a book you're just reading, a nonfiction book, maybe it's a book for information, for a study, for a topic or something, cookbook, like you should be marking it up.
Yeah.
Like that's the
Something my
point of
mom
buying
does,
it.
every time she makes a recipe from a cookbook, she'll write the date that she made it. So
Oh, that's so cool.
it's kind of just like a nice way to like, if the book gets passed down, or even if you're just looking through it with your kids again, you can remember all those times you made a recipe, and it really gives you like a ranking of the things that you love to make. Like, oh, this is so good, I made it this many times. It's like a nice index
Yeah,
of what you've done as a family.
that's so cool. Because I mean, it's so easy to forget. When was the last time I made this recipe?
Yeah.
Oh, I made this 3 months ago and I haven't made it since. Okay, maybe it's not that great. Maybe I messed it up, but this one, man, I'm making this one every other week kind of thing. This is good. This one's good. We gotta keep this one in the rotation of meals kind of thing. Like I love when I find a new recipe or a new meal or something for my kids, and it ends up in the rotation of meals that we're gonna have on the menu now because it was
Or even
just
if you
that
tried
good.
something different with a recipe, like maybe you used some flaked sea salt at the end to finish it, or you did like a special garnish and you
Oh
really
yeah,
liked it, like at the date, and like that's what you did. So you remember for next time, like this made the recipe better for me. Like our family loved
yeah,
this.
yeah. Like that's what I do for my cinnamon rolls. Like when I make them in the fall, or like
Mhm.
around like pumpkin during pumpkin spice season, I guess you could say. Is I like to add just like a tablespoon, yeah, a tablespoon of like pumpkin spice into the mix
Mhm.
to give it that seasonal like flavor kind of thing because it
Yeah.
makes it just seasonal kind of thing. And I have in my recipe book, it's like at the very end, or it's like off to the side, I think, like pumpkin spice during fall, and to add it in there because it makes it like just more like appealing during that time of year. And then I add the pumpkin spice into the main cinnamon rolls. I add it into the filling, and then maybe just a pinch of it into the icing too, just to really give it that like pumpkiny like kind of stuff. Maybe it's
Yeah, a little
pumpkin
something
puree
extra.
or pumpkin spice, like yeah, but it's like fits. It's that time of year kind of thing.
That's
And
something
during
I love
Christmas,
doing
it's
with
peppermint.
pastry, by the way. Like whenever you're
Yeah.
making a pie or a quiche, add the flavors you love in. Like if I'm making a vegetable quiche, I'll add some lemon zest into the pie crust, and it gives you like a really nice kiss of flavor. Or if you're making
Hmm.
a pumpkin pie or an apple pie, go ahead and add like a dash of cinnamon or cardamom or pumpkin pie spice
Yeah.
into the flour when you're making it, and
Hmm.
it only gives you extra flavor.
Yeah. It doesn't hurt anything. Like it
No,
helps enhance it and take it to that spot where it's like, oh man, this is like that good apple pie.
yeah,
Like this is that good pumpkin pie kind of thing. And you know it's homemade, you know it's handmade, and it just makes it extra delicious there. So, but perfect. All right, so John, any final thoughts here before we get wrapped up? I have like just one a couple closing questions before we get wrapped up.
no. I hope it was like really fun talking to you about the book and just fun parenting things in general. We're so similar. It's really funny because we had I worked in an ed therapy office while I was
Okay.
a teacher, so I got to work with a lot of kids who had like special challenges, and all the things you said were totally true.
Yeah. No, it's important. It's interesting how you know two different people, one that works in mental health and one that was a math and science teacher, and now is a cookbook author and cooking for life, and just how we can come together and how we're really not all that different, in the end.
That's why food's a universal language.
It is. It really is. And they say a way to a man's heart is through his stomach. So
Yeah,
it's very true. I'm sure that's true for your boys. When
it's
you
true.
cook them a good meal, they're like, "Oh, I love you, Dad.
They're
I love
so
you so
happy. Yeah, they're like
much.
the mood like the mood lightens up. Like my favorite.
Like, I love you so much." Like my daughters, especially, like this is such a yummy meal, Daddy. And they're like hugging me, and there's like my 3-year-old sits next to me at the table. So when it's good, she's like, "This is so yummy." She's like grabbing my arm, and
That's
she's
sweet.
all over me. When it's not, you can tell she may not have liked it because she's like, "Oh, oh," like throwing her
I
head
won't let that
around
go
and stuff.
unsaid.
Yeah, 3-year-olds are a creature. I couldn't imagine how much fun it was to have two toddlers at the same time. Like to have two toddler boys at the same time. Just how chaotic and fun that was.
Yeah, it's still chaotic and fun.
I bet. Yeah, now they're just older and more chaotic. So, but no, that's awesome. All right, so just to wrap up here, I do just want to if you like that intro music to the show, well, that's the Podbeat app. If you like taking your podcast and making it a musical experience, the Podbeat app has you covered. What I can do is I can open my podcast and I can play some EDM beats. If I want to open it and I want to play some trap beats, I can play some trap beats. Maybe some trip hop, maybe some lo-fi, maybe some reggae, maybe some pop, maybe some rock. If I need to enhance my podcast and make it into a musical experience, it's great for runners. If you need to keep a cadence, or even if you're in the kitchen cooking and you're like, man, I need something just a little bit more to really fuel this cooking session. Maybe you're outside grilling and you just need a little bit more to get through it. Maybe that lawnmower is too loud while you're mowing the lawn, so you can't hear your favorite podcast. Podbeat app can help eliminate some of that noise. Whether it's podcasts or audiobooks, they're absolutely fantastic. You can download Podbeat for free from your app store, and then It's just fantastic. It helps take your podcast to the next level. Podbee, along with Forefathers, Dadbot Supply Company, and many other links you can find in the description of the episode through the link tree, and they're fantastic and great ways to support the podcast there. So without further ado, John, just the last question here that I like to ask is all guests. Let's say a young father comes to you who's maybe 20 to 25. I became a dad when I was just barely 22. I was like 3 months past my 22nd birthday. I was super young. My brother, he was 19, 20 when he had his first kid. So we were super young. Let's say a friend of yours just had his first kid, maybe had twins, whatever the situation is, but they're super young. He comes to you, he's like, John, I'm a new dad. I'm scared. I'm nervous. What advice would you have for the brand new dad that's super young?
Take it one day at a time. Forgive yourself for all the mistakes you're going to make, because everyone tries their best. And try and be present for everything, because nothing will last. But understand that you can't always be present, because sometimes you're just trying to survive. That's it.
100%. 100%. Well, for the listeners out there, they're like, man, this cookbook sounds amazing. I got to get some of these recipes. Well, guess what? Preppy Kitchen is available now, because this is coming out on August 22nd, I want to say. So it's August 22nd today. I know the date, I promise.
Yeah.
Just came out on Tuesday the 20th. And so you can purchase Preppy Kitchen Super Easy 100 Simple and Versatile Recipes right now. And it's available just through your website, through
Amazon, Barnes & Noble, local booksellers, anywhere that sells books has it.
Everywhere it sells books. Perfect. And, get it, use it, mark it up. It's fantastic. And it's probably on the cheaper side of cookbooks as well. It looks like it's about $35, correct?
Yeah, and there's always sales going around, so.
Perfect. Well, John, is there anything else you want to say about Preppy Kitchen, about the book, or anything that you want to leave at the very end here for the listeners?
I hope everyone makes something delicious and enjoys the process.
I love it. Well, guys, thank you so much for listening today. I hope you learned something about the kitchen. I hope you go and purchase this awesome cookbook. Hope you're able to relate to us, laugh with us, feel with us, relate to us, whatever it was. I hope that your grilling session went good. The lawn looks nice and mowed. The kids' diapers are changed now. Or you have a toy room to clean up. Honestly, just leave it. It's fine. But whatever it is, thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks for listening. I appreciate you guys. And make sure you guys do all the things you can to support the podcast. Review, leave 5 stars, like, follow, subscribe, all the things. Show the love. And we'll see you next time right here on the Undead Podcast.
Bye.